Welcome to The Big Story. I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Pauline Verzosa.
And I'm Sean Yao.
Tonight's Big Stories. The National Security Council's Executive Committee and membership get a reshuffle from Malacanang, and the few who had to go include Vice President Sara Duterte and her father, former President Rodrigo Duterte.
A teachers group is gearing up for legal action to question the 2025 national budget that lumped together allocation for traditional education agencies and police and military academies.
And making the rounds on social media are reports of a new disease outbreak in China that has become, quote, an international health concern. The Department of Health and even the Chinese embassy were quick to dismiss this.
President Bongbong Marcos has reorganized the National Security Council at a time of discord on the levels of national politics and external defense. According to Executive Order 81, signed on December 30 but only released today, January 3rd, the NSC's restructuring is meant to guarantee that it remains a resilient national security institution. The EO says changes in the composition of the advisory body will, quote, ensure that council members uphold and protect national security and sovereignty.
The council will now have it on its executive committee, President Marcos and his executive secretary, the Senate President, and the House Speaker or their representatives, the National Security Advisor, and the Secretaries of Foreign Affairs, Justice, National Defense, and DILG. Most members of the council enumerated in the 2001 EO will remain, except for 3 deputies that can be designated by the Speaker versus the previously mandated deputy speakers for Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao.
EO 81, though, has clearly removed Vice President Sara Duterte from the National Security Council. Her father, Rodrigo Duterte, Joseph Estrada, and Gloria Macapagal Arroyo will also no longer be part of the council as former presidents. Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin explains that at the moment, the VP is not considered relevant to the responsibilities of membership in the NSC. He adds that when the need arises, President Marcos has the power to add members or advisors to the council. Only when necessary, the chiefs of the National Intelligence Coordinating Agency, the Armed Forces, the Philippine National Police, and the National Bureau of Investigation, and the Bangko Sentral will also be allowed to attend NSC meetings.
What a way to end the first week of January with an executive order that will surely be talked about in the next several days. Let's start the conversation with geopolitical analyst Richard Haydarian, who joins The Big Story tonight via Zoom. Welcome back to the show. Richard, you're on mute. Still can't hear you. Parang naninibago si Richard kasi New Year, ano? Parang kailangan i-reset yung mga ano. Let's try one more time. Can you hear us? Oh, not yet. So we'll give him some time to fix off his tech. But you know, looking at this EO 81 by the president, it is the first order for 2025. Just to set the proper context around this whole issue, back in November 2025, 2 days after the controversial press conference of the Vice President, she made an open letter to NSA Secretary Eduardo Año asking why she had never been invited to an NSC meeting. She requested for the notarized minutes of the meetings and a review of the accomplishments, which was a response to Secretary Año saying that the statement of the Vice President was a matter of national security. Yung threat niya dun sa first couple at saka kay House Speaker. Ano. So eto na yung kinalabasan nun na tinanggal siya sa NSC as ex-officio member and ex-secom.
Yun nga eh. Of course, notably tinanggal din yung participation ng former presidents. In our case right now, tatlo na lang yun, Rodrigo Duterte, ERAP, and GMA, right? And while I don't know kung may message din ba itong sinesend, that's what people are saying. Like, does the first EO really have to be this?
Not excluding the Vice President from the NSC. But the EO did say that when the need arises, the President has the power to add back members or to add members in that case. But
So
we don't
depende
know
kung
exactly ano yung need na yun.
and kung ano yung problems that will crop up as time goes by. I guess that's what they're saying. Kaya pati yung BSP governor pwede rin ipasok sa
Pero
NSC.
bukod sa sa mga yun, ang pagbabago rin dito, yung dating deputy speakers for Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, napalitan ng 3 deputy speakers chosen by the House Speaker. So it also adds more power to the House Speaker
I
currently.
think just a bit of context on that, no? From before kasi ngayon, ang dami ng deputy speakers. Dumami siya nung time under President Duterte and now under President Marcos, parang there's even more. So ang dami-daming
Kaya
deputy
pala
speakers.
nalilito na ako.
Nakakalito kasi marami sila eh, di
Ang dami
ba?
nilang role. Okay,
Oo.
Richard, can you hear us? Can we hear you? Not yet. All right, not yet.
I think may technical difficulties si Richard. I wonder where he is, if he's in Baguio. Kasi nanonood ako kanina si Ronald sa Baguio din. So medyo choppy rin yung connection niya. And also sira din yung internet namin sa bahay today.
There's also that.
Those are the challenges. Actually, there's a lot of questions revolving around the first EO of the year. It definitely says a lot, spells a lot. For the coming year, 2025, what's going to happen?
Exactly. And ES Bersamin saying that the VP is not considered to be relevant. She is not relevant to the responsibilities of membership in the National Security Council. I'm guessing that stems also from the fact na they considered it a national threat. Yung mga sinabi niya sa kanyang midnight press con.
Well, looks like we have a Richard. Can we hear you?
Richard,
Can
are
you try to
there?
speak?
Yes, can you
There
hear
you
me now?
go. We're so happy to hear you. Okay, Richard. Okay, the NSC is an advisory body to the president, so he has full prerogative over who he wants to be in that body. Am I correct with that assertion? And what do you make of the first EO of the president in 2025?
Well, obviously, the president has started the year with a bang, and I think you're absolutely correct. We're going to discuss the implications of this for quite some time. Some would say perhaps this is a belated move, as we know, Sara Duterte used to be the head of the NTF LCAC. This is the person who wanted to be the Department of National Defense secretary at some point in time. This was a person who was the officer in charge when BBM was abroad. And we saw over the years, unti-unti, nawawala siya, particularly last year. Essentially, she lost all of those positions. But it was still a big wonder why she and her father were part of the National Security Council in light of 2 important things. So kung titignan natin yung statements na lumabas, there was a mention of essentially additional guarantee. I think you can read in between the lines, perhaps all of the assassination threats perhaps may have to do something with that. But more importantly, the other thing you can hear from the National Security Council is also this implication. Now, we have to have alignment in terms of understanding what is our national sovereignty and national interest. So at once, I think if you read in between the lines, what is being said here is that the Dutertes are not trusted by this administration, in terms of whether they share its outlook on our national security. I think this has to do with the fact that the Dutertes are very close to China. And Sara Duterte, who has been saying a lot of things about a lot of conflicts around the world, has been conspicuously quiet on the West Philippine Sea issue. So that's one. But the other one is, of course, this implication that they're not trusted. So you can see this as a kind of a not so subtle purge of the Dutertes from one of the most important organs of the state, because the National Security Council, led by former DILG Secretary and Military Chief General Anyo, has been really at the forefront of making sure that this administration doesn't face any serious security challenges at home, and more importantly, coordinates our position on the West Philippine Sea and how we deal with China.
But Richard, I understand that it actually makes sense given the events in the last how many months. It makes sense for them to be removed, right? The association with China, the mistrust, and yung hidwaan and that big breakup within the unity.
And the active threat too.
The active threat too. But on the other hand, politically speaking, how does this set the tone for the rest of the year, given also everything, the impeachment trial, the elections?
Well, I mean, it remains to be seen if this is the beginning of a new chapter of direct confrontation, because, to be honest, I've been on the record saying that it looks like there's tremendous amount of sometimes diffidence on the part of President Marcos Jr. to really take on the Dutertes, considering what they have laid out in terms of direct questioning of his mandate. I mean, you had no less than former President Duterte on multiple occasions, essentially almost agitating the military to do something. You have people close to him, like former presidential, the spokesman, Panelo, implying that, there could be some urge to create security destabilization. I mean, you are seeing all sorts of agitations for separation of Mindanao. So, to be honest, I see this as quite 1 year late. But nevertheless, with elections just around the corner, with conversations over impeachment set to take precedence once again, and with all of other kinds of legal cases that could be filed against Sara Duterte and her father on multiple fronts, perhaps this is the opening salvo in a new chapter of confrontation between the two sides. But honestly, I'm always very cautious not to overread into things, because we have a really, I won't say notorious, but we have quite a conflict avoidant president. So is this a purge that is the beginning of a new chapter, or is this just cleaning up the house and making sure that the Dutertes are kept at a healthy distance from sensitive national security conversations? Because obviously there are a lot of people inside the government who are not comfortable talking about China, West Philippine Sea, and national security issues if one or two Dutertes, in this case two Dutertes, would be around the corner.
Well, Richard, back in November 25, we were talking about it. Nagkaroon ng parang banter si Vice President Duterte, pati si General Año. Tinanong niya kay General Año, bakit hindi ako inaimbitahan sa kahit anong NSC meeting. She even requested for a notarized minutes of the meeting to be able to review the accomplishments of NSC. Would this be the response to that? And taking a look at the EO of President Arroyo, she fixed the composition of the National Security Council. What would be the rationale in including past presidents and also the vice president in that body?
I mean, great question. I mean, this just tells you what kind of unprecedented situation we're finding ourselves in, because historically, presidents invite ex-presidents because of their experience, because of the privileged information they may have, and of course, because they may still have residual influence, including on international affairs. So people like, for instance, former President Fidel Ramos, who was considered as a great global statesman. His advice, his counsel was always appreciated by multiple administrations throughout the years. And you saw with also former President Arroyo, despite the fact that she may have had, to put it mildly, complicated relationship, whether it's Estrada, whether it's Ramos. Time and again, we saw different presidents, Pinoy, even Duterte himself, bringing his predecessors, because you want to, collate. You want to bring the elder statesmen. You want to bring their wisdom and experience. And at the same time, you want to make sure all major figures are aligned when it comes to their national interests. But now we are in a situation whereby the former president and the current vice president, both of them from the Duterte family, in one way or another, are not only contradicting the position of the government, but at some points you could say even threatening the government, or some would even accuse them of actually towing the line of our rival in the West Philippine Sea. So we are in an unprecedented situation, and hence we are seeing this major reshuffling by the government.
Do you think it has anything to do with, this is slightly more boring than what we were just talking about, but do you think it has anything to do with our shift from internal defense to territorial defense, guarding against potential infringers on our territory and our EEZ?
Well, actually, I had to also answer to Grace. Great question, too. And I think perhaps the reason they also had to remove them is that we don't trust sharing with you the minutes of our conversation. I think that was a very subtle way. I had to say that, right? Like, oh, you're demanding for the minutes. Oh, I think we don't want to share that with you. That's a very not so subtle way of saying we don't trust you guys. And who knows, maybe the minutes, next thing you know, ends up in Zhongnanhai. These people were Zhongnanhai. So I'm just saying, it's a not so subtle way of saying we don't want to share you the information. We don't feel comfortable with you having access to the key and important discussion we have, because the National Security Council coordinates all of our important domestic and international security policies. Now, on the question by Sean, yeah, I mean, we are in the midst of a massive transition in our national security strategy, in the sense that hindi lang Mindanao yung focus natin, hindi lang NPA and domestic insurgencies. We are at the very forefront of an emerging new Cold War. In few days, Donald Trump is going to take over the White House. In weeks from now, you're going to have the Trump administration knocking at the door and perhaps pushing the Philippines to be much more at the forefront of holding the line, whether in the West Philippine Sea or on even the Taiwan question. So if you're the National Security Council with Trump coming in with the new Cold War expected to intensify, then maybe the last thing you want is to share the minutes of your very sensitive discussions with the U.S. with a certain dynasty or family which is suspected of having a little bit of overindulgent sympathy towards China, which is on the other side of the fence as far as this new Cold War is concerned. So yeah, I think it also has to do with the fact that it's not only a new year, things are going to get hotter when it comes to the U.S.-China competition, and things are going to get hotter in terms of Philippine-U.S. security cooperation as a more hawkish Donald Trump administration takes over.
Well, Richard, E.S. Bersamin did say that the reason behind this reorganization was really to streamline the membership of the NSC. He actually even added that sa ngayon, they don't see the relevance of the vice president when it comes to the responsibilities in the NSC. What do you make of that in terms of the relevance of VP Sara in that? And how do you think her perceived non-critical stance on China came at play in this reorganization?
I mean, this is where you would have, I mean, BBM really needs someone like either Bongo to what, Duterte was, or he needs someone like his own version of Ronald Llamas, because I think the people we have in Malacanang are sometimes even nicer than BBM, when in fact you need someone to be the attack person, right? So I think this was, I don't know if I want to put it as, it was like a polite gloss on a more or less purge of the Dutertes from the national security organs of the state. I mean, I think this is where you can see also the communication problem with this administration. They need someone in Malacanang who can go out there and spell it out and say, we don't trust the Dutertes, you're not welcome here, we think you could be a national security threat. You already made threats against the president, the first family, and the Speaker of the House. For some reason, BBM doesn't have that person. So I don't know if Ronald Llamas or someone like that is available for Malacanang to hire. But that's, I think, one of the interesting gaps that we have seen with the BBM administration. They don't have an attack dog. They don't have a kind of pugnacious, aggressive kind of spokesman or someone in the Malacanang who will say things that have to be said. But BBM, for some reason, is not personally in position to say that. So yun yung kulang sa atin.
You don't think
yung
it's
kulang
the
nakikita
Congress?
natin sa Malacanang nowadays.
And to add to Sean's question, actually, we might not have a front-facing, strong figure, but the president is also giving the House Speaker more power here by allowing him to appoint 3 deputy speakers to the NSC. So does that speak, that the president and the House Speaker are totally aligned in the past decisions? Because, we've always been questioning if this is what the president wants, if what the House Speaker decides on is also what the president wants. I mean, this first EO in 2025, are they drawing the line on the sand that this is, House Marcos and the House Speaker is with us?
Absolutely. Another very important question, because I think if you look at the rumor mills, you look at I think hindi lang Marites to, there have been some discussions that maybe the Speaker of the House position is no longer assured. There have been even rumors that, the Sara camp was supposedly or allegedly asking BBM, that as part of a ceasefire, perhaps the Speaker of the House should be changed. There have been even rumors of hidwaan sa loob daw ng kabinete. Some of the big figures within the cabinet supposedly have had some disagreements on the state of affairs. So this is closing in the ranks. This is a way this is a very clear way with President Marcos Jr. saying that I stand with my cousin. I trust the Speaker of the House, and that the House is very much part and parcel and a core element of our national security. In fact, I do not remember too many speakers of the House in the past who, for instance, visited Pag-asa or who were so vocal on national security or West Philippine Sea-related issues. So I think this was a vote of confidence, absolutely, in the Speaker of the House, and also perhaps a way also to dispel those rumors that maybe Speaker Romualdez' position is not as secure as before. So clearly, he's still in many ways the right hand or the left hand man of the president.
Okay, speaking of national security, that underwater drone that they recovered off the waters of Masbate, that was on December 30. What do you make of all that?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, the concerns about intrusions by China or by hostile elements, whether it's drones, whether it's missiles falling off in our waters, whether it's submarine movements, this has been going on for quite some time. I think the fundamental challenge for the Philippines at this point in time is to improve more than anything else its domain awareness, the ability to know what on earth is happening within our waters, so that we can deter and we can tell others, do not mess around, do not put drones or do not put fishy stuff within our waters. And at the same time, perhaps at some point we have to develop certain capabilities to, I won't say shut down, but to deny access. You can shut down the GPS. You can use electronics, warfare technologies, among other things. So I think those things will be very important. So obviously China is flexing its muscle. China is saying that it has preponderance of force in the West Philippine Sea. And I think this is a wake-up call for the Philippines. So all of these are related, right? Because if you look at the statement of the National Security Council, it talks about both domestic and international. So I would say for the very first time, the domestic politics in the Philippines and the evolving international environment are very much tied. As I said, the Philippines is confronting a two-level or double-deck Cold War, right? U.S. China, Duterte Marcos. And this reshuffling within the National Security Council is a direct response to that two-level challenge that the Philippines is facing right now.
I guess it also says a lot. It spells out what 2025 is going to be all about, with the first EO being related to security matters. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We have geopolitical analyst Richard Haydarian. Thank you for coming to The Big Story. Happy New Year.
Up next, is the recently signed 2025 national budget unlawful? Well, a teachers group thinks so and even plans to take legal action against the government. We'll speak with Teachers Dignity Coalition Chairperson Benjo Basas about this in just a bit. Keep it here on One News.
Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here on One News.
The lower house is downplaying allegations that the national budget signed by President Bongbong Marcos for this year is laden with pork. Maria Enriquez with the report.
Itong budget na to ay sabi nga namin ay parang punong-puno ng pork.
The Makabayan bloc first sounded the alarm on some questionable provisions in the 2025 national budget signed by President Bongbong Marcos. Now, some groups from the private sector are speaking up as well. The Philippine Business for Education, or PBED, pointed out in particular the rising discretionary funds, which makes it harder to monitor because it lacked transparency and accountability. PBED insists priority should have been accorded to education, health, and nutrition, but backlogs to teacher recruitment remain, as well as classrooms and learning materials. The group also pointed out the huge cut in the budget for health. House Assistant Majority Leader Jude Asidre has this to say in their defense.
But I'd like to assure people that this went to a very rigorous process. The amounts as well as the items approved in the budget were not done overnight. They were a result of many, many weeks and many months of preparation and deliberation in the executive as well as in the legislative.
Asidre insists the concerns are all hearsay, but the lawmaker assures these are all taken into account.
We hear them, we listen, and I think there will be a continuous reminder as we proceed to budget implementation, as the President himself expressed during the signing of the GAA.
In addition, Asidre denied there's pork in the 2025 General Appropriations Act.
If we're talking about the pork barrel style that was in place before, I don't think that's the case. First, the line items are there. Second, the guidelines are crafted by executive agencies. None of these projects, none of these items have been delegated to the legislative. I don't think it's fair to say that this is our discretionary and they represent a return to the old pork barrel system.
On the other hand, the Department of Social Welfare and Development defended the Ayuda para sa Kapos ang Kita program, or AKAP, by saying that 99.31% of the budget allotted to it has been utilized and distributed accordingly. Further, according to the Labor Department, the budget has special provisions wherein only those workers whose earnings don't reach minimum could qualify. The only requirement is certification from their employer. But if there's one thing DOLE is concerned about, it's the request of former Finance Undersecretary Shelo Magno to publicize the names of those who have been AKAP beneficiaries.
Itong mga informasyon na to ay sa tingin ko ay personal information. Meron po tayong mga batas na umiiral patungkol po sa pag-una, pangangalap at at custody at possession po ng mga information na to.
In the end, the DSWD assures AKAP won't be used by politicians, especially during the election season slated this year. For News 5, I'm Marian Enriquez. We are One News.
Meanwhile, Teachers Dignity Coalition said the approved 2025 budget may have violated the Constitution. While the General Appropriations Act for this year did allocate the lion's share to education amounting to 1.55 trillion, it also included institutions like the Local Government Academy, PNP Academy, National Defense College, Philippine Public Safety College, and even the Philippine Military Academy. So in fact, it is still the Department of Public Works and Highways that is getting the biggest share. Let's discuss this further with Benjo Basas, National Chairperson of Teachers Dignity Coalition. Magandang gabi. Welcome to the big story.
Yes, magandang gabi po sa inyo lahat, Ma'am Gretchen, Ma'am Regina, and Ma'am Sean.
Okay, Benjo, itong news item natin, no, binanggit nga natin na pati yung defense schools ay naisama do sa budget na patungkol sa education. Sa ating konstitusyon kasi hindi nakasulat o hindi nakaspecify na ano ba yan, Education Department or DepEd ba yan? Or education sector as a whole. How are you putting forth your argument that this budget is unconstitutional?
Well, unang-una, no, traditionally, no, lahat po nung nagdaan ng mga gaan natin ay talagang specified, no. I mean, no, yung DepEd alone, no, hindi kasama yung CHED, hindi kasama yung SUCs, no, at even yung TESDA, no. Etong may pinakamataas na allocation. No, hanggang 2024 po, no, yung DepEd, no. Ngayon, pag sinama po natin yung CHED, traditionally kasama naman po sa education sector talaga, no, kasi trifocalize nga yung ating education system, no. So we have TESDA, CHED, and DepEd, no. Of course, under CHED yung mga SUCs natin, ano, ng public, no, of course, no. So pag sinama silang tatlo, no, ay mas lalong malaki yung education budget po natin, ano. Pero ngayong 2025, no, budget, no, na nilagdaan ng Pangulo. In fact, bago lagdaan ng Pangulo doon sa BICAM. Yung BICAM po mismo ay meron na kagad violation. 'Di ba? Nakita ho natin na hindi nga umabot ng 1 trillion, no, samantalang 1.1 trillion na, no, yung DPWH, and that is of course for us, no, that is a violation, a clear violation, no, of the intent of our constitution, no, kung saan sinasabi niya, no, the state shall assign the highest budgetary priority to education. And if we are, no, to quote that provision, no, in its entirety po, mababasa rin natin doon ang sinasabi doon, no, and ensure that teaching will attract and retain its rightful share of the best available talents through adequate remuneration and other means of job satisfaction and fulfillment. No, so ibig sabihin nito, ito'y tungkol sa teacher, no, ito po'y tungkol sa mga guro, ito'y tungkol sa mga nagtuturo, no. Kapag ang pinag-uusapan po natin sa Pilipinas ay education, of course, no, lahat po tayo ay mag-agree, no, na ang tinutukoy natin more or less ay yung basic education. O sige, isama natin yung mga kolehiyo, 'di ba? Dahil kasama naman 'yan. Sige, isama rin natin yung skills development, no, yung TechVoc, no, kasama rin naman talaga 'yan, no. Pero hindi po natin naiisip dito na ito yung education, ano, na kasama po, no, yung nag-educate ng mga local government executives, no, nag-educate ng magiging pulis, nag-educate ng magiging sundalo, no. Hindi po, no, yung budget ng mga iyon ay kasama po, no, talaga namang may budget, at of course, no, dapat naman talaga na meron tayong budget sa defense, no. At yung defense po na budget ever since, no, nandyan po nakapasok yung PMA. Ano po, at yung National Defense College, no. Ang nangyari po ngayon, isinama lahat na nag-o-offer, lahat na nagbibigay ng diploma perhaps or ng education, ano po, ay isinama dito sa education sector, no, to make it appear, no, that education, no, has the largest, no, share, no, doon po sa budget natin for 2025. And we think this is kumbaga circumvention po ito, no, nung batas, no, para lang masakabi, no, na compliant po yung ating gobyerno.
Which brings us, of course, to the next logical question, Sir Benjo. Naiintindihan namin at marami nga nag-share na opinion na yan. Gayon pa man, ang nakalagay sa batas, medyo vague. Right? We understand that traditionally sa lahat ng GAA, DepEd ito ang interpretasyon. Ngayon, nagbago yung interpretasyon, pero hindi rin natin masabi based on yung mismong statement sa Constitution. Sino bang makaka-explain? Final arbiter, final interpreter of the law is the Supreme Court. So the next logical question is, are you going to be filing a case or joining a group of civil groups to file a case in the Supreme Court para maisabatas na at ma-clarify ano ba talaga yung ibig sabihin ng education doon sa provision na yon sa 1987 Charter?
Yes, ma'am. No, certainly yes. No? Kasi kailangan talaga natin. No? Kami naman, sabi nga namin, kapag sinabi ng Supreme Court, no, okay, ang education sector, kasama yung PMA, kasama yung PNPA, di ba? So, well, yun na yun. Ano? Kasi magkakaroon tayo ng jurisprudence. Ano po? Magkakaroon na po tayo ng definition. Ano po? Pero ngayon, kaya namin to gustong dalahin din doon para once and for all, malaman din natin, ano? Well, eto din naman, ano? Kapag ka sinabi naman ng Supreme Court, if ever, no, na lahat ng yan ay kasama sa education sector, lahat po halos, no, ng ating mga ahensya ay merong mga education services, di ba? Ang DOLE, meron po siyang education services, 'di ba? May paralegal training, no? Ang DA meron po, no? Lahat, no, ang CHR meron po, no? So lahat, ibig sabihin ba noon lahat ng ang agencies na ito, no, na meron silang mga attached agencies pa o projects o programs, no, ay could be lumped, no, together, no, into this education sector. Sa tingin namin that would be absurd, no? At hindi namin ganon yan nakikita, no? But then of course ma'am, no, I agree, no, na pag nag-decide yung Supreme Court, no, that's it, no, at kami naman ay kikilalanin po yan.
Okay, Benjo, in your opinion, yung share of the education sector pie that goes to basic education or mismo doong sa DepEd, kahit isama natin yung CHED, sapat na ba yun para mag-improve? No? Naintindihan naman natin this 2024 po na yung PISA results, very disappointing, non-stop yan. So we understand saan tayo nagkukulang. Pero in your opinion, pag-aralan nyo ba yung mga numero? Sapat ba ito? Gawa na nga na natapisan pa yung budget ng computerization, etc.?
Well, yun nga po yung malungkot doon, ano, ang pangulo natin, ano, kahit ang ating secretary ang sinasabi, kailangan natin talaga, no, ng technology, no, sa pag-aaral ng digitization, ano, kailangan natin, ano, nung lahat, no, nung mga makabago, no, na mga gamit natin sa ating mga paaralan. And yet, no, well, surprisingly, no, ang ginawa po ng ating mga mambabatas ay tinapyasan, ano, ng 12 billion, no. At ang malaking bahagi nito ay para doon supposedly, no, sa DCP, sa DepEd Computerization Program, no. Pero more than that, of course, no, dati pa naman namin isinusulong yung mas mataas na budget sa edukasyon, ano po. At yung mga dapat nating tutukan, no, dito po sa education sector. Of course, no, yung lagi na nating alam, no, na napakalaki ng ating backlog sa classrooms, no. Meron po tayong mga kakulangan, no, doon sa ating mga facilities, no, and materials po, learning materials, no, and of course yung ating mga teacher, no, sobra-sobra yung trabaho ng ating mga teacher dahil kulang po yung ating mga teacher, no, as compared, no, to doon sa ating lalong lumalaki na population at enrollment, no, sa ating mga public schools, no, in particular po. Kaya kulang po ito ma'am, no, well, natuwa naman din kami, no, doon sa statement, no, ng ating secretary nung nakaraan, no, na nung binawasan ito talaga namang yung trend na yan ay baligtad, no, kaysa doon sa mga lagi nating nakikita. Kasi taon-taon naman po tumataas maliban pag may realigned na budget po, no. Taon-taon naman po talaga ay tumataas ang DepEd, and that is the single agency na may pinakamataas na budget at laging number 1, gaya ng sinasabi po namin.
Kaya talagang patong-patong ang problema sa edukasyon. Sama mo na dyan sa mga nabanggit mo, yung early childhood education natin, ano, na yung mga teacher, the allowance lang ang kanilang natatanggap at minsan wala pa. So it is understandable, the clamor of our teachers on this, and we will see the updates on that. But in the meantime, thank you so much for joining us on The Big Story. TDC's National Chairperson, Benjo Basas.
We're taking another quick break, but up next, what's the truth about the alleged new virus outbreak reported in China? We'll discuss that when The Big Story returns. Keep it here on One News.
Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here on One News. The start of the year also marks the beginning of the total ban on POGOs in the country. For the Presidential Anti-Organized Crime Commission, or PAOC, the job is not yet over. PAOC has received reports on small-scale underground operations. Following the President's directives, PAOC has teamed up with LGUs and the Office of the Solicitor General in order to crack down on these illegal operations. But the top priority now is to locate over 11,000 foreign POGO workers that are still in the country. These POGO workers failed to downgrade to tourist visas and leave the country before the December 31 deadline set for them and now face deportation.
With that crackdown in full force, we have the Executive Director of the PAOC, Undersecretary Gilbert Cruz, to discuss the ongoing efforts and the next steps of this pressing issue. Yusek Gilbert, Happy New Year, and thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Yes, ma'am. Happy New Year and good evening to all of us.
Okay, I have been hearing your warnings since before the new year about how a lot of these big POGO workers are now hiding under underground small-scale operations. You mentioned contacting LGUs and even appealing to citizens to report. Exactly how big is this number, and are you expecting na yung 11,000 more workers that have not downgraded their visas? Sila po itong hinahanap natin.
Yeah, actually we are looking at more or less mga 11,000 na mga foreign nationals whose visas were downgraded from a working visa to a tourist visa. So if ever they were caught o makikita sila ng mga law enforcement units natin or LGUs na they are working on computers o nakaupo sila ron sa sinasabi nila na call centers o sasabihin nila BPOs, definitely they're violating immigration laws kasi nga they are supposed to be out of the country siguro nung mga 30 days ago o 60 days ago pa.
Since they are already illegal aliens, quote-unquote, because they have extended or gone past the deadline, if they are flagged in the airports, will they be allowed to exit the country or will they be detained first?
They will be questioned first kasi nga since their passports are tourist visas na and dapat talaga wala na sila sa bansa and kung yung binigay sa kanilang tanning of their stay in our country ay nag-expire na, then there's some questions to be answered by those foreign nationals that will be caught with expired visas.
Okay, and with regard naman to POGO operations, those going underground, I can imagine, Yusek Gilbert, they will be much harder to ferret out, to find, and to, stop. What is the game plan now of PAOC? It looks like you really have your work cut out for you this coming year as these operations go underground.
Actually, we have much coordination that we needed from the local government, especially with the DILG, sa pangunguna nga ni SILG on Vic Remulla, we did some meetings already. And we already disseminated those audiovisual presentations showing how a local government official or how a local government employee can detect or makikita nila how is it, ano ba yung mga indicators going to na magsasabi na there is an illegal POGO operation in a particular area. Like halimbawa, the presence of foreign nationals in the area and halimbawa kung gabi nakikita nila at madaling araw bukas pa yung mga ilaw. Those are physical indicators na mayroong POGO operation doon sa area.
Okay, well, Yusek, it was actually reported that some big POGOs have been rebranding themselves as BPOs and even relocating sa Visayas and sa Mindanao. Can you elaborate more on that, Yusek? When you say rebrand, nagpalit na po ba sila ng business style because they also changed their names with the SEC? Or are they still masquerading, or are they still POGOs just masquerading as BPOs?
Ganun ang nangyayari. Others are masquerading as BPOs. But actually, ang gagawin talaga nila is scamming operation, yung mga POGO operation. And these are some yung mga modus operandi na ginagawa nila in some parts of our country already. There were reports that we received from the local government officials and some are from the law enforcement agencies na nagsasabi na there are some people na mga Filipinos and may mga kasamang Chinese na they are negotiating on renting a resort or hotel for 6 months. At nagugulat na nga lang sila na nakikipag-usap pa lang pero actually yung mga gamit or yung mga sasakyan nila nandun na sa mga truck. So when they ask kung anong gagawing negosyo, ang sinasabi lang nila they will be establishing a call center, but definitely hindi naman sila naniniwala dahil nga napakita na natin kung paano nag-ooperate ang mga POGOs, and immediately they report this itong mga ganitong insidente sa amin.
Yusek, nabanggit niyo po, no, the presence of foreign nationals is a tip that there might be an illegal POGO operating. Pero sa mga locals, hindi po ba posible yun? Kasi alam po natin na pag Pilipino, victims po ang ating pagtrato sa kanila dahil na-employ po sila sa ganito. Pero is there a possibility that this could also be adopted by local citizens? And ano po ang maipapayo po ninyo para sa mga nasa kanilang mga bahay o kanilang mga unit at napapansin nila na may illegal activity pero hindi foreign nationals? Meron bang ganong mga reports?
May mga ganong report kasi ganito yan. Initially, hindi lumalabas yung mga foreign nationals. When they try to negotiate on renting a place, ang unang nakikipag-usap are mga Filipinos. And once na malapit na nilang isara, then they will introduce itong mga foreign nationals. Kasi in this kind of operation, mga POGO operations, sa ngayon, they're still needing yung assistance o yung partnership with foreign nationals is very essential. Kasi ang itong mga foreign nationals, if they are targeting mga foreign nationals din na bibiktimahin nila o scamin nila, they need to talk in yung language nila. Let's say if ang tatargetin nila ay Vietnamese or Malaysians or Chinese, then they need foreign nationals to profile itong mga tao na to, yung mga lolokohin nila. And then after getting the profile and naikahon na nila itong bibiktimahan, then that's the time na papasok itong mga locals for engage na nila in some communications before they will be introduced into cryptocurrency scamming or lab scam.
Okay. Maraming salamat at rest assured, Yusek, natatawagan namin kayo from time to time to check on how this is going. But for now, maraming salamat at Happy New Year, Undersecretary Gilbert Cruz, Executive Director of PAOK.
And meantime, the Department of Health was quick to shut down alarming rumors of a new disease outbreak. That's after social media posts made rounds claiming that China has declared a state of emergency because of it. Now, the reason? An epidemic of multiple viruses, influenza A, COVID-19, human metapneumovirus or HMPV, and mycoplasma pneumoniae, causing an overflow in hospitals and crematoriums. However, the Department of Health clarifies that this is false. There is no concrete evidence and no confirmation from China nor the World Health Organization about this. The DOH urges the public to stay vigilant and to not fall for fake news.
Reliable sources currently do not support circulating posts on social media about an alleged international health concern. There is no confirmation from either the cited country or the World Health Organization. The DOH is actively verifying all information and will keep the Filipino public updated. Please do not share questionable websites or online sources. Let us not spread misinformation and confusion.
Okay, at least for the new year, no new health scare or pandemic scare.
Kaya pala yung mami ko tinanong ko kanina, may bagong virus
Oo nga, actually, my dad shared
Sabi niya, ay, hindi, parang hindi naman totoo.
Nakita niya siguro yan online or sa Viber groups. Okay, so talaga, be vigilant, okay? Yun ang payo namin. But that's it. We've run out of time. And just like that, TGIF, Friday na naman at weekend na naman.
First Friday of the year, 2025.
Right, that's it for the big story tonight.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in and have a good night. Stay tuned because coming up next, Play-by-Play with Andre Felix and Cheska Litton Calao. What do we have on the first week of January?
marami na naman about
Marami na
NBA.
naman.
And we also have a guest tonight, of course, Tanay Anis, announcing her retirement. We'll be having her on the show later on via Zoom. Buti na banggit nyo na Friday na ang bilis, no? It's just first Friday. Any weekend plans, girls?
Pahinga ulit.
Hindi pa tapos ang celebration. May party pa kami, New Year.
Grabe,
Si Cheska yata may weekend plans kasi bigla siyang
May weekend
natawa.
plans ka?
I will be enjoying my bed and my
May
pillows.
nag-workout na ba dito?
Wala pa.
Wala
Next week
pa.
na. Next week.
Siya.
Balik Alindog at balik pasok on Monday pa.
Kasama siya dun sa napakaraming pumunta sa gym.
There was no one in the gym kanina to So feeling ko Monday pa sila lahat
Monday,
bumalik.
Monday.
Kung mag-alala, Cheska.
Wala pa rin traffic today.
Pakita mo.
Hindi, babantayan natin yung New Year's resolution ni Cheska habang inaantay namin yung sayo, Andre.
Ako, hindi. Iniisip ko tumakbo ulit. Pag okay na tayo.
Tignan natin.
Pag napatakbo natin yung katabi mo, sige.
Sige, oo natin yan.
Well, thank you, ladies, and happy weekend. We've got NBA star Jimmy Butler, finally speaking out amid rumors that he wants to be traded, plus results of today's NBA games.
And we speak to former Filipinas team captain Tanay Anis live as she begins life after football.
I'm Andre Felix.
And I'm Cheska Calao.
And here's tonight's play-by-play.
Ramiro, the show by Mamoy leaves Philip. Puts it on. Unbelievable. Gemma on the left side.